Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, a seventh-year doctoral student in clinical psych, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. Yes, and each week we will provide and create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, and rate this episode, no matter what you think about it.
Rate this episode.
Rate it, rate it, rate it.
Rate it. Okay. I'm waiting for the music to end.
I know, exactly. I was trying to buy some time.
I was like, me too. I was like, I wish Brandon would figure that out.
And now
the disclosure. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
How are you doing?
I'm
I've been making it a point to ask you because I know it's been like,
because
oh my God, I can't believe you asked me.
Who warms the sun?
What? Okay,
like
so
who warms the sun?
This is a recovery podcast. Please stop smoking crack before you do this, okay?
Who warms the sun? Because the sun gives warmth to everything. So who warms the sun? Anyway, so I thank you for asking how I'm doing.
Wow. Wow.
I'm doing so in this moment. I'm very exhausted, but I'm feeling very accomplished. Yeah. I finished up all of my applications.
That word popped up, accomplished, because I
did it.
Yeah, you're feeling very accomplished because of. Go ahead.
Yeah, all the stuff. All the interruptions have already started,
and they're gonna keep up, and they're gonna keep up because I love
Louis. You are love. You love and light. That's what you are. So I'm feeling accomplished. I submitted all of my applications. Like a true alcoholic and addict, this morning I was like, maybe I should submit another one. And I was like, you know what? I need to stop. This is done. No more. So I did that yesterday. I looked at my ceiling. Kind of mixed emotions, feeling numb and also feeling scared. Because there's some uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I'm really excited for this next phase of my training, and it's a big deal for me. It's a big deal for my family. Yeah, thank you for asking. And one other thing I want to say, I've been feeling very grateful for the Castro Country Club specifically because it's been this constant throughout all of my schooling, from undergrad to grad school. I'm setting up shop and doing things, and recently walking into Brandon's office to procrastinate. So I'm feeling, grateful, grounded, numb, exhausted, happy. How about you?
Thank you for asking. I feel, what I'm going to piggyback off what you said. It's for all of my recovery, the Castro Country Club has been a constant. It's been the one constant when things are screwy or whatever. I used to say in the beginning, it was I used to be able to show up here, in the beginning, something that we experienced early in recovery. All of a sudden, I start to feel better, and I want to start to make everything all of a sudden right again. But the truth of it is that, and I've said this a bunch, and it's not my thing. You can't walk 100 miles into the forest and turn around and all of a sudden be out. So you sometimes got to sit. You got to sit still, and this was a great place to come and sit still. And so that's the thing that really kind of, and also I learned how to be in community here. I learned how to be around people again, and so that was pretty wonderful. What were you going to say?
Louis, how at the gala, I told that beautiful story about how one of my favorite experience, one of my most memorable experiences was first coming to the Castro Country Club, and Louis was behind the register, and it was the first time someone remembered my name and gave me a hug, and and then I go back to the table and Louis was like, thank you, but I don't remember that happening. Do you remember that?
I was probably trying to hook up. What you doing?
You know what?
How you doing?
It was very meaningful for me.
Yeah,
it was, here I am. I to this day, it's over 10 years ago, and I still think about it.
Well, it's it was probably one of those rare moments when I wasn't being a toxic motherfucker because it was a tough time. But no, I'm glad that I listened to it, and I'm really glad because I think that no matter what you're going through, it's you never know how.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you.
Something that I was going to talk about. Okay, so I've been talking about how the people pleasing, the Al-Anon stuff that was popping up or whatever.
Okay.
It's been rearing its ugly head, and I have to be careful. You know how we talk about this is a bad neighborhood in between these two ears.
Yeah, you shouldn't go there alone.
Exactly. It's like, especially not at night, because if I'm not careful, if I don't shake myself out of my stinking thinking or whatever, I create these narratives that kind of take me places I don't want to go. And so I'm grateful. I am absolutely grateful that I'm experiencing this now, because the tools of the program, I've been able to kind of take that to where I need to talk about it, process it, not just hold it, not just try to keep it to myself, but to really kind of work through it.
My sponsor says it's better to think, to say it out loud rather than to think it in.
Yeah.
Say it out rather than think it in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So that's it.
That's great. I think I really like that we are talking about this on given today's topic, recovery in the workplace. So
yeah, we were supposed to do this topic a while back, but things didn't work out.
Odds will,
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So today's topic is recovery in the workplace. I think for many of us, and of course, the other thing I want to remind folks, if you're listening in, always, we're always happy to hear you and your thoughts. So share them with us. So today's topic, recovery in the workplace. So for many of us, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it's easy for me to like work my program when I'm, say, in a room like at a 12-step meeting, or if I'm adjacent to something that's around a 12-step meeting. But when I get out into the world, sometimes I forget that like I've committed to myself to practice these principles in all of my in all areas of my life. And so recovery in the workplace, I think, a lot of people, I hear people talk about things going on at work, either because of pressure or because of goals for themselves or like ego stepping in. And it's one of these areas where or maybe I shouldn't say but a lot of people tend to forget that, we can work our program around it. The last thing I'll say is like one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with my partner has been like why we're drawn to do the kind of work that we do. And like the thing that keeps coming up in our conversations is like we have a different employer and that employer is God. And okay, that's it. I'll stop there and we'll go to you. And what were you thinking?
No, I was listening. I was just listening.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Our employers got. While you were talking, I was thinking the challenge I think that we have is that when we go into these spaces, people are in various understandings of themselves and how they can work with others, and so it's not always easy. I mean, I always go into the best intentions. I am going to be a work among workers. I'm going to cause any grief. I'm going to try to be of service, show up, and then you get to deal with others. And my current job, it was never my plan to go into management. I initially was just going to go there and work because it was going to use it as a means to an end to get to school and what have you. But life shows up in the form of all sorts of things, including the pandemic. And so I ended up taking a different position, mainly because I'm shady and I didn't want this other person to have it because it just wouldn't have made any sense. Yeah. Okay.
So recovery in the workplace.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, and we were going to talk about it. I mean, it's just a challenge of making sure that like I stay aware of what's going on. I've been talking with my sponsors about honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Being honest, number one, about what I'm feeling about something, being open to hearing somebody's fair critique of what I just said, and having the willingness to kind of make whatever changes that are necessary.
Yeah.
If I have to, yeah.
I need to bring out my Diet Dr. Pepper. Not that we're sponsored by them, but
we should be.
I feel like Sydney Powell. I was saying that earlier because during her deposition, she's drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper.
She probably was getting paid.
She was like,
they're as unethical as they are. She probably was getting paid big time.
Well, she's suffering a lot now. Well, this is not that kind of podcast.
Yeah.
But this idea that okay. One of the things I really like about my current job is that because I'm in a consulting role, it's expected of me to kind of like, for my thinking to be outside of the system, to like be aware of this. So I do consulting work for the state of California. So I have to like, I'm familiar with like the systems at work, but my role is to kind of think outside of that system, like when I'm thinking about like solutions, right? So if there are morale issues or if there's like personnel issues, right? And one of the things that I really like about that is that I've always seen, maybe not always, but the way I see the nature of my work is one, I really do feel like I'm living out my purpose. Like I think this is why I was put on earth. And the second part of that is like, as a result of that, I feel like I get to bring God into work. And my intention is always to help people live full, complete, happy lives, even at work. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of times it's really easy for me to kind of, I guess, practice the principles at work, except that sometimes I find myself lured in by things. So one of the things that can sometimes happen is like, if there's someone on staff that people don't like, I might get sucked into that conversation, and sometimes it's difficult for me. I don't generally participate in those conversations. I'm more of like a listener. But if there's something that's said where I agree, it's very difficult for me not to also kind of like contribute in that way. Mm-hmm. And you know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's that's really difficult. And I think the other thing is like, I love what you were saying earlier about like going to your brain or to your mind being dangerous, because sometimes when I'm at work, it's very easy for me to tell myself stories about like the quality of my work, or like if this doesn't go well, I'm whatever. It could just go on and on and on.
I think the problem with me sometimes too is that I don't want to say that the work that I do is kind of mundane, but I sometimes have to shut me off in order to, it's kind of like that whole idea, like when you do folks who talk about trauma and sex work and whatever, and how they do drugs to kind of numb themselves. Well, I almost have to shut me off to go through certain experiences at work. And in the process of shutting me off, it's like I'm maybe a lot more susceptible to kind of some of the bad politics and behavior that kind of show up. And fortunately enough, because I'm continuing to do the work, I go through this period where I'm all, whoa, I just do not like how I'm showing up. And I've talked about it a lot here. A while back, I was like, you know what? I realized that I was creating this environment for work. I was bringing the negativity. And if I make a conscious effort to kind of change that, it will possibly change how I view my work environment. And it worked for a short time. But I have to keep coming back to it, because I don't think you get to, as much as I would like to think I learned, I started practicing a behavior and it became habitual or whatever. It didn't.
I have a story for you. Uh-huh. So right when I finished undergrad, I started working at this office, right? And this was before I got sober. And so I was very like ego driven. A part of that was just kind of like, that's what I needed to kind of, in order to survive. So I was always like, I wanted to be the best always. So, and a lot of that is like, as a side note, a lot of that was like related to like internalized racism from when I was younger, and like feeling like my entire life, in order for me to be taken seriously, I had to work 20 times harder than the white kids. And so there was a lot of that rooted in my psychology. Mm-hmm. And there's also parts of me when I was a kid that felt like I had to work harder because I didn't want to be seen like all the other Puerto Rican kids, right? Quote unquote, for people who are listening. And so there's a lot of stuff there that's problematic, and we can talk about that some other time. But I set the stage this way because part of what was happening for me throughout like my teenage years and then into adult life is that my aim was always to be like the best. Like I always needed to like work really, really hard, and I just wanted to be the best. And so it was my first professional gig, and I started working at this office, and that's what my goal was. My goal was like, I'm going to do this really well. And at the time I started to see this new therapist. And at one point I say to the therapist, I'm like, I don't understand why it's like so hostile at work and why people behave the way they do. And she's like, it's you. She's like, it's you. Like she's like, I've been listening and over the last couple months, and you're the one who's created these kind of dynamics between you and your colleagues. And then sure enough, like I checked in with someone and they were like, yeah, like, we don't trust you. It feels like you're always like strategizing and maneuvering. And so my motivation is to like to truly be of service, to live out what I think is my life's purpose, etc. But that wasn't easy to get to.
No, it's not. It's like, and I think it's tough when like you were able to go and talk to your coworkers, and it couldn't have been easy to hear.
No,
say,
and you know
"Yeah,
what?
we don't."
And you know what's crazy about that? And it's not like it saved our relationships. Like to the day that I left, they didn't trust me.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly.
and that I had, I made my bed. I had to lie.
It's like when you the hardest thing at work is when you all of a sudden become that person. Like if you're the late person or you're the one who works slow or whatever, it's really hard to change people's opinion. And like some people are just rigid. They're not willing to allow you to grow or to change. Something I was thinking about, like, okay, so I was saying earlier, it's like the certain behaviors had become habitual, but I have changed, and I wasn't giving myself credit for. I brought something that I did in early recovery. One of our fellows, I was struggling with the idea of character assassination or gossip and what have you. And when we talked, we acknowledged I'm not perfect, and this is a process. This is something I'm working towards. And so we talked about being mindful about who I talk to around, like if I making sure like that I was communicating this, or if I was around folks who understood what I was working towards, not just some random person who walked in, because you can't convey what you need to. I don't know you. So that's what I did at work. I am not doing it perfectly, but I changed how I'm having conversations. I don't just stop in the middle of the store and talk shit like I was doing. And I try my darndest to, if I feel like I need to gossip or judge or whatever, I just go and find some work to do. And yeah, so it's helped me because I like going to work. I mean, I think that was one of the main motivations for making some changes, because I was like, oh God, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, and I am not enjoying being here. And so how do I change that?
Yeah, I had a job. I was my first like research and insights job a few years ago, and I remember working with this researcher. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that I remember we were talking about like, what is the purpose of a job? And the way I visualized or thought about work is like the goal with work for me has always been like to have a job where I feel like I get to arrive as my complete self, and through my work do I get to do or like live the kind of life that I want to live. And I'm not talking about like the monetary gain, but I'm talking about like enjoying my life and enjoying my work. And she said to me, she's like, oh, well, I see it differently. She's like, I think work, you take a job that allows for you to have the kind of life you want to have outside of work. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh, I guess that is one approach. That's not for me. I can't see myself like muscling through at this point in my life. I can't see myself muscling through something that is like uncomfortable just so that I can maybe have a life that I want outside of that. Like we spend more time at work than we do literally doing anything else.
Absolutely.
But you were reminding me too about how like in work environments you can have family dynamics come up.
Oh God.
You can have a lot of that kind of stuff. You're having a reaction.
No, there's a danger like when they're all like, this is the family environment, this and that or whatever. If you come from a family where dysfunction is a part of, then like I think that like the one thing that I have maintained, I always have maybe a few people that I can, like right now there's maybe one or two people that I work with that I can really be chummy and whatever, and everyone else I'm cordial in a way, not just kind of a cold cordial, but we can laugh very, very kind of superficially.
Sure.
But when I need to talk about if there's something deeper going on, this is not where I'm taking the deep. I usually, especially like if I'm going through something to struggle or whatever, that's probably when I'm the best at minding my own business, staying in my own lane and not creating any drama. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you about it. I don't want to talk to anybody about it because I don't trust you.
Yeah. What I was thinking about is So the family dynamics that I see come up in work environments are related to the type of roles people have in their families. So maybe this is just my experience, but if, for example, you came from a family where you had to fight for your parents' attention, I find that those kind of behaviors end up showing up at work. So you have like a person who's working really hard to gain the approval of their boss, so you see that kind of stuff happen. Or I find that different people try to take different things away from their job. So sometimes like someone's job can become their identity, or someone's job can become their higher power. Right. And I think that's when things start to get complicated. Surely for me, like when I think about times when, like, I actually discovered this in the last couple of months, that being a workaholic is like a real thing. And the reason why I realized it was a real thing was because I remember, like, at the height of all of the intense stuff that I was doing, is like immediately after doing things that were like really stressful, is I realized like I felt numb and I didn't care about things. And I was like, oh, this is how work can become a drug.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you just wear yourself out. There was something else I wrote down. Oh, like the other thing I realized is like the importance of having like your person at work, especially when things get stressful. That's been really helpful for me. Where like if I am having like an off day, or if I need to vent, that there is someone at work that I can do that and it feels safe.
Yeah, it feels absolutely. That's, for me, it's like it's been so important, because there are times when I just need to kind of decompress and I need to just to let it out and say it to someone. And having this person that's like, we get to laugh, and there's no, because what's unfortunate is that I find myself in the jobs that I've had, I've always moved in the direction of like training or management or what have you. And usually what happens is it's like I end up being the supervisor or boss to folks that I worked with and were friendly. And I've gotten much better at changing, understanding that the dynamic has to change. But the times when it didn't, it's like, and you had folks, and mainly something that I'm struggling with now, you have an individual who is really, in my opinion, taking advantage of a situation. And I have to remind myself that as long as the owners are good with it, I can't say anything.
Yeah.
Because in the times that I've said something, it's bit me on the butt,
Yeah.
And I need to take care of myself. It's like it's so tough, because there's a way that I like to work. There's a way that I like to show up. And I think that's the thing that I've been struggling with. And I think you were talking about the different styles of like whether or not how you are bringing you
to
wholly,
work.
or some people just thinking work is just work, and that's what creates all the friction, all of these different ideas of why we're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like, and I'm all how even when when my intentions are the best, how do I find a way to be harmonious, to work with folks, because it's tough.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and for folks listening, if you have any stories about or ideas about when it's hard to bring recovery to work, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
We just had a situation where I work, where a person, actually, I'm going to step away from that story. Like, I don't trust that I might not say something that's too disclosing. What I have noticed is that different people get different things from the type of work that they do. And by that, I mean, if a person, for example, feels basically, okay, let me rephrase all of this. What I'm trying to say is that people bring their personalities to their work. And it isn't like we stop, just because we go to work, it's not like we stop being human beings, like you're still like a human.
Yeah.
And there's this way that, like, because of professionalism, or the idea behind professionalism, which by itself is, it's problematic by itself, but because of professionalism, there's this idea that we have to kind of foreclose or get rid of our humanity in order to like show up for our job, right? We see this on like online a lot where people are being like cursed out by customers, and because it's their job, you know, they're working really hard to keep it together. And I think there's like a different kind of labor that happens here. There's a lot of like emotional labor involved in work. And in my experience, it's that emotional labor is hard to do when you don't have space or someone to like hold that with you, you know? So sometimes like if you don't have a therapist or you don't have a close friend, then you're just going home, you're holding all of that shit on your own, you know? And that could be, yeah, that could be real destabilizing over time, especially. So I guess the takeaway of what I'm trying to get at is like the value of being a sober person at work, which is like, at least for me, I get to bring something to a meeting or to my sponsor. You know, there's like a framework for me to get support.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, I don't even have to wonder. I wonder what I'm going through right now would be like if I didn't have a place to bring it, because I feel like the work that I get to bring it to my sponsor, I get to bring it to my fellows who are doing the work also, and I've found the kind of relief that I need, especially when you have, like, I try to surround myself with folks who don't have, who won't blow smoke up my ass, but who like, you know, I know exactly. No, exactly. No, but who will give it to you as straight, who are not afraid to kind of maybe offend you, because I'm not interested in having folks in my life that are going to tiptoe around, because that's not going to help me at all. And usually I've been very good at kind of laying out, like, especially with work, laying out in the most objective way I possibly can, so that I can get a fair assessment. So, because I want to be, you know, a worker among workers. I also want to be liked and everything. I always joke and tell them, and it's like, I don't have a problem playing the bad guy, but I end up in that role because of the way my work ethic and the way that I am. No, that's not wrong. I said my work ethic, and that was a judgment. That was a judgment.
What about it was judgmental?
Okay, so because what I was thinking about is like, my work ethic, and what was behind that, it was loaded. It's like, I work hard, I show up on time, I do what I need to do, and they don't, you know. And that's something that I struggle with, because I have these little things that I have to say to myself constantly. I can't expect other people to work in my department the way that I work, and just because they're not doing that doesn't mean they're not working hard. People are showing up where they're showing up. And for me, it's like, I can go the whole day and just like on nonstop. I'm like a savant. I see things that always need to be done, so I'm running to do it. And it frustrates me, like when I see folks who are in my department kind of chilling, doing nothing, and I'm like thinking. And then, of course, even if I just turn the corner and I don't know what you are doing in that moment, I'm thinking, why are you being so lazy? What's going on? Get your ass to work. Of course, I don't say that, because I've just kind of thrown my hands up. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, because in the past, this is something that we can talk about as a Black man. My tone is I'm accused of being snarky. You know, different things, like they're policing my tone. And for me, I feel like I'm working with grown ass people, and I should be able to talk to you if I'm being thoughtful. Just because there was no emotion, just because there was no emotion, it was just flat, doesn't mean that it was cruel or anything. It was just as a matter of fact. And if you can't handle that, I have like, yeah,
that's the emotional labor that I was talking about. Yeah, there's man, there's a lot here.
Oh, absolutely.
To talk about, but the thing that's the top of mind for me right now is, on my best days, whether it's at work or it's in my interpersonal life or I'm like out in the world, I see my interactions as like expressions of God. And by that, I mean, when I am not trying to control people, places, or things, like I can be at work and I can take a seat back and I could just see things kind of play out and be in awe, you know? And for me, that can be really exciting, because then because I'm not trying to control things, and I feel like I'm able to see more. and I'm able to show up more. So like I can see something going on at work and I'm like, oh, that person's suffering, you know, and it's showing up in this way. Or if I'm out in the world and I'm hearing a share or someone's doing something that bothers me, like I get to have, you know, there can be some grace and some room in that. And I'm saying that on my best days, because on my worst days, I see something or I hear something and I'm like, I fucking hate everyone and I hate the world and why is everything, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not helpful. And I think maybe the last thing I'll say about that is one of the benefits of, I think, being a sober person and going to meetings is that I am regularly hearing that I can't trust how I'm thinking and feeling all the time. You know, like and for this person, for me, I have to be reminded of that regularly, you know, and I also need to be around spaces or around people where people, sorry, I'm tripping because there's a bunch of ideas going through my head, but what I'm thinking of is when I'm hearing someone struggle and I'm not in myself, I can see like somebody else's life play out. And then like, okay, like when I come to the club, for example, I'm pointing over here because I sit over in the other room. When I come to the club, for example, and like you start to overhear all of these different conversations. And when you're around long enough, they're the same conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like in the last couple of weeks, I've heard conversations about people struggling with like weight issues and body image issues, and they're angry at someone and they hate work and and if you sit there, it's literally like the same conversations happening over and over and over again. And you know, what I love about that is like I can relate to all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but because I'm taking a seat back and I'm just watching like life play out, I'm like, oh wow, like I'm literally just like a human. You know, we're all having this like human experience. And I think the thing that gets us in trouble, or what gets me in trouble, is when I think that my experiences are somehow so unique that no one else can relate to them.
Absolutely.
Including when I'm at work.
We have a comment.
Let's hear it.
Oh, Anka. It is difficult when there are people who show up as slacker and there's no accountability. Yes, it really does affect morale at work. I tell myself I'm just going to put my head down and focus on what I need to do, but it does affect how I feel about the work culture. Absolutely. That is something that I struggle with a lot.
Yeah, that's relatable. And I think for me, like this is one of those situations where
Thank you, Anka.
Thank you, Wonka. It was also really good to see you the other day. But
I know,
you know,
I walked in and I saw you guys talking. I was jealous. I'm all, what's going on? It's like, is she going to be co-hosting this?
We were having so she's doing very similar work. She's also a therapist in training. So we were talking about epigenetics. It was a really cool conversation. So
I love that
epigenetics. Yeah, it's the gene, like expression of genes in relation to the environment. We can talk about that some other day.
Thanks.
Yeah. But what I was thinking about is I totally forgot. Fuck.
No,
my brain.
Can you pull that back up so we can
I remember now.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Thank you. Yeah. So like this is an example of when I ask myself, okay, like if I'm working step 3, right? And someone is slacking at work. Okay, like for me, I have to ask myself, like, okay, so what? Like what am I gonna do? Like, do I tell on that person? Do I have a conversation with that person? There's so many different ways of cutting that pie, you know, slicing that pie. And that's difficult because sometimes it feels like something's being done to me, you know, like, oh, I'm having to pick up this person's slack.
Isn't it always? It's like,
yeah. And I'm like, but what if, you know, sometimes, most of the time, again, on my good days, I ask myself, what if this is exactly the way it's supposed to be?
Oh yeah.
You know, like what if this is, you know, maybe there's something here for me, you know? Like one of the things that I've been a muscle I've been exercising over the last couple of years is trying to love intentionally, like not allow for love to be this passive thing, but to be something that I exercise. So in moments when I don't like a person, place, or thing, you know, actively looking for like, what is the thing here that I can love? And sometimes it might just be like, I just love that this is a person that I'm existing with in this room right now. I know that sounds really woo-woo. It's hard to explain, but do you get what I'm saying?
No, it doesn't. Sometimes I can do that, but like a lot of times not. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, you said earlier, I think that the reason why I haven't lost it and just quit my job is because there are more times, like we're talking about this, and I'm talking about some of the extremes, but I think that that is not that's not the norm. The norm is, most of the time I have those moments where I can look back and I see how things work. Like I see folks working and showing up and doing what they're doing. And it's those times when I'm not spiritually fit that, and it's almost like those moments, you know how life is where the ones who are so negative are the loudest. It's like I only remember those few moments. It's like, I think this is a great, you can't see the beauty of the forest for the ugliness of some of the trees. Like it says in the book, there are some of the trees that bug me. And so I'm missing out on an opportunity to see just how everybody's working together. Because like at my job, like it's not one of those places where just anybody can do everything. Like we all have areas that we specialize in so that we can come together. Because I really believe that if you know a little bit about everything, you don't know a lot about a lot. And so I practice staying in my lane as much as I can. I think that what makes it difficult is that I'm management. And so I have occasionally I have to kind of I blend in. I can't just focus on my one area.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
I also feel like I need to stress or say out loud. Do we have a comment? Do we stress or say out loud that like I'm not always in that headspace? It's something that I have to work at regularly. It's something that I have to pray about because there are certainly things that are much harder for me.
Yeah.
Like one of my things, for example, is when someone is being given credit for work that I've done. It is so like that is something really hard for me. That's super old for me. Like that's left over from when I was in elementary school. Like if I did something and somebody else took credit for it,
it's like I don't need a ticker tape array, but do not give somebody else credit for the work.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like that, for example, I've been in situations where I'm like, all right, cool, you can do that. But
Exactly.
but there have certainly been moments where like that comes up for me and it's really hard. So there's this conversation is reminding me of there's this Buddhist proverb, I think. So I have a tattoo that's based off of this story. So there's, I don't know, the phrasing of the story is something like this. So like as we get older, we acquire different identities, right? We might acquire the identity of brother or father or employer or employee or lover, right? So we acquire all of these different identities as we get older. And the identities are a lot like feathers, right? Some feathers are beautiful and we want to hold them closer. Some of them are not so flattering. They're ugly, so we try to hold them farther away, right? And the moral of the story is that the mistake that we made is in believing that who we are, that our identity is the feather itself, when really our identity, the person we are, is the space that keeps all of those feathers afloat. And I think that when we're talking about work or we're talking about recovery, I think, and we're talking about God, for example, like that's the space between all of that. Like who are we at work and who are we when we're talking to other people? And sometimes, I think for me at least, in order for me to get back in touch with like the space between, it really does take me like slowing down and going to like my sense of a power that's greater than myself, or going to a loving person so that I can drop back into those parts of me that are more loving and more compassionate.
Absolutely. That was beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
Makes me, I want to see that tattoo now. Is it on your butt?
No, no, it's on my side. It starts down here and it goes all the way around. I think we have 5 minutes left.
That was the first time I went there today. I was good.
You're doing great. You're growing. Yeah, you're growing
until next week.
So we have some minutes left.
Exactly. It's like this is when we wait patiently for
someone other,
for Brandon.
So today.
Oh yeah. So we have a special guest in the studio. Like,
Leo's here.
Leo's
Leo,
the newest employee at the Castro
Country Club. Leo, is it okay for us to talk about you right now? We're only saying nice things. So Leo is the new assistant manager at the Castro Country Club. He's wonderful. He's from Hawaii.
Yes, he's freeing Brandon up to do things like load up past episodes of the podcast.
Yeah,
he's so caught up.
It's so nice.
That's amazing.
Are you the person behind that? Were you behind or Brandon? But it freed Brandon up to do it. So we feel your presence. It's so nice to have you here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
You're very, very like
you fit right in.
Exactly.
Were you around before? You volunteered before? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't notice.
Yeah, but you know what's really cool? So Leo has a calmness. He has an energy because I know when I was working here, I was a mean motherfucker.
No, Leo is so calm. Actually, you remind me a lot of Brandon in that way. You're really calm. Okay, so Brandon, at any time.
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community. I always say with barbecue community.
The LGBT barbecue community. I don't know where I was going with that. Okay. We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
And again, please rate this episode.
Can we get some clarification about this? So, if you're going to rate us, only do it if they're nice ratings. If you're going to say things about us, only say things if they're nice. And if you're going to talk about us to your friends, only say nice things.
Okay, and let me give you some other clarification. If you're going to rate us where you are. Tell us what you think so that we can grow. Because if you
if you're going to do that, just send us a private email.
If you blow smoke up our butts, like we're going to think that we're going to think that we're the best and not change. There'll be no room for growth.
Listen, one of like an old rule of thumb is praise in public, punish in private.
But that's not for this.
I think so. So if you have bad things or you have constructive criticism or feedback, contact Louis privately. Or email us.
Please do, and then I'll go to the computer and plug it in.
You'll copy and paste.
How about that? Exactly.
You know what? Say whatever the hell you want to say.
I know exactly.
You want to give us 1 star? Give us 1 star.
I feel
whatever is true for you. That is between you and God.
I feel like the feedback that I've gotten the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of folks is that they really
you don't talk loud enough into the mic.
No, they really enjoy this and appreciate this. Now we just need you to put it in an algorithm. So that
we're basically telling you whatever, just do whatever you want to do.
That's what I